Hello, this is my Artist Way update for week 8. Um, yeah, the last 2 weeks, week 6 and 7, I was a bit more unmotivated to do the Artist's Way. And it's funny because I'm actually just looking at the book again of what I read in the chapter of week 8, and week 8 is recovering a sense of strength, which is funny because I've kind of like locked back in, I guess, this week. But week 6 and 7 was the first 2 weeks that I didn't finish all the tasks in the week, and I felt really like kind of like annoyed with myself that I didn't do it, and then I was trying to like get them done before moving on, and then I just was more behind in week 7 after it happened in week 6. But I decided this week in week 8 I'm just going to focus on week 8 because that's the week I'm in, and I got everything done except for I think one thing, but I want to implement that later anyways, if that makes sense. But so week 8 is about recovering a sense of strength, and it tackles the major creative block time and exploring the ways in which I've used my perception of time to preclude taking creative risks. And yeah, it talked about like survival. One of the most difficult tasks an artist must face is a primal one, artistic survival. And how we must remember that our artist is a child, and that we can handle and that what we can handle intellectually far outstrips what we can handle emotionally. And then talked about the ivory power. How many academics are themselves artistic beings who are deeply frustrated by their inability to create. A quote in there was, "Surround yourself with people who respect and treat you well," which I liked. It said, "Many talented creators were daunted early and unfairly by their inability to conform to a norm that was not their own," which I thought was kind of interesting. And then another quote said, "Trust that still small voice that says this might work and I'll try it," because I think that's a reminder for myself. And then it talked about gains disguised as a loss, which also like manifested physically this week for me as well, which is so random. Like in my full-time dance course, we were meant to have like, there was 3 days in the week that we were meant to have someone come in to create a dance with us, and we only got 1 out of those 3 days. So then that means we had other stuff when we were meant to be like, not that learning a dance is like chill, but it's not constant like cardio like what a normal day of dance is. Like it's still hard, yes, but in a different way. It's a lot more of this as well as this, like it's both. So yeah, and you kind of get a bit more breaks sometimes, not all the times. So like part of me was looking forward to that, and it's exciting learning a new dance. But then 2 out of those days we didn't end up learning the dances, and so we had classes, which were still good, of course they were good. And then we also did grad stuff, and grad stuff is like really hard because if you're doing a grad run, you're dancing for, at the moment it's only 45 minutes, but it goes up to 2 hours by the time we finish grad. So dancing for 45 minutes straight, and I mean like you do a whole dance and you have 30 seconds, and that 30 seconds is to change your shoes and get into the next dance. So that's a lot harder than like physically than if you're just like learning choreography, you know what I mean? So I could perceive that as a loss, but maybe it's actually a gain disguised as a loss that I don't see. So anyways, that's what that was. And gain disguised as a loss is a potent artist tool. To acquire it, simply brutally ask, how can this loss serve me? Where does it point my work? The answers will surprise and liberate you. I should actually do that about that. I haven't done that yet, but I should. Another thing I highlighted was, I learned when hit by a loss to ask the right question, what next, instead of why me, which I really liked. When faced with a loss, immediately take one small action to support your artist. I acknowledge you and your pain. I promise you a future worth having. And then it talked about age and time, product and process. And it said, okay, so question, do you know how old I'll be by the time I learn to play the piano? Answer is, the same age you will be if you don't. If that makes sense. I had to read that a few times to get it, but I think that's just me. But then I was like, oh. So it's saying how I'm too old is an evasive tactic. It's always used to avoid facing fear. Creativity occurs in the moment, and in the moment we are timeless. Instead of allowing ourselves to create a journey, oh my god, I can't actually read. Instead of allowing ourselves a creative journey, we focus on the length of a trip, saying it's such a long way and all that. But each day is just one more day with some motion in it, and that motion toward a goal is very, very enjoyable. Creativity lies not in the done, but in the doing. And then talked about filling the form. What do I mean by filling the form? I mean taking the next small step instead of skipping ahead to a large one for which you may not yet be prepared. That's what that was talking about. It said, instead of checking into a life during class at the local culture centre, we buy art forum and remind ourselves that our stuff is not in style. But how can it be? It doesn't exist yet. Which is crazy, because I feel like that's such an excuse that I use for not being creative, is that it won't be cool or won't be trendy. But how do you know? Like, it doesn't actually exist yet. So that's interesting. Then I was talking about watch yourself for a week. Notice the way you'll pick up an anxious thought, almost like a joint, to blow off or at least delay your next creative action. That definitely happened a few times this week, and I did call myself out about it. It said, like, how you've cleared a morning to write or paint, but then you realise the clothes are dirty. I'll just think about what I want to paint and fine-tune it while I fold the clothes, you tell yourself. What you really mean is, instead of painting anything, I will worry about it some more. Somehow the laundry takes your whole morning. I think I do that a lot. And then, small actions lead us to the larger movements in our lives. And then we had to do an early patterning exercise. And we had to do some affirmations. And then we had to do a lot of things of, like, in a perfect world, where would we be? New childhood, what would have been your perfect nurturing? And then we had to list 5 things we are not allowed to do, and then list 20 things we like to do, and then we had questions about them. Oh my god, sorry, my eyes are like twitching. I don't know what was going on. I think it's because I'm tired. Anyways, and then it just asked us questions about those 20 things, like, does it cost money, is it free, expensive or cheap, alone or with somebody, and I think it was just, I'm assuming, to, like, have awareness about it, because you might think something's hard to do, but it's actually free and doesn't cost anything. But you create excuses. Like, for example, for me, for the longest time, I was, like, wanting to go on runs, but I told myself, oh no, I can't go on a run until I get tights, because I don't want to wear bike shorts out running, like, in my neighbourhood. I just didn't want to. And then I got tights, and I was like, oh no, but I need, like, a jacket, because it's cold in the morning, so I need an athletics, activewear jacket to wear. And I was making excuses, but to run, it's free. You don't need to pay any money to run. I could run right now if I wanted to. So it's cheap. And you don't have to do it with someone. You can do it alone. You know? Like, I was just making excuses for myself. So, anyways, then we got to plan a perfect day in our life, like our life right now, and then plan a perfect day in, like, our ideal life. And then the last task that I didn't do was to choose one festive aspect from your ideal day and allow myself to live it, which I have not done. And then we did a check-in. This is the last thing I'll talk about. But my check-in, yes, I did my morning pages every morning this week. I didn't feel tempted to abandon them this week. I did in the last 2 weeks, but I didn't. this week, and I felt more honest in them this week. And then at my artist date, I went and watched the sunset, which is kind of not a very creative artist date. And I wrote, I have let other things sabotage my artist date. I apparently don't have the time, or I make excuses for it. So I'm aware of it, but I've been aware of it this whole time doing the artist way, but I haven't actually done anything about it, which is a problem. And then I talked about a few random synchronicities that happened, and I talked about how, like, the grad stuff, we were meant to be learning grad dances, and then we ended up doing grad runs and cleaning instead. And then for any other things to add, I just said how I was feeling a bit unmotivated to continue my journey with the artist way this week, but I pulled through. And next week is recovering a sense of compassion. So, you.